This year marks my 10-year anniversary of partnering with Card Kingdom, who have been excellent sponsors and continue to provide cards and accessories to the wonderful Magic community all around the world. Let's celebrate this milestone together and keep it rolling for another decade more. Thank you, Card Kingdom, for the support. I'm a member of Team BASILISK, an esports organization on a mission to inspire the next generation of scientists through the study and play of difficult games. Check out basilisk.gg for more info on our initiative and to meet our Hall of Fame team. Thank you, Basilisk, for the support. In a retrospective on Dominaria from 2018, Mark Winters, the set's art director, repeatedly expressed dismay about the state of the plane as he inherited it. Dominaria had been left an apocalyptic wasteland, which really bothered me. In the many months leading up to the concept push, Winters read through all the old Magic novels and scanned through the many card sets to familiarize himself with the plane he would soon be commissioned to repopulate. Less was he tracing specific plot points or character motivations, more was he looking for immersion in the subject matter, or rather, chasing the spirit that moves through worlds of make-believe. He wanted to find the life force of Dominaria and reinvigorate it through visual arts. In time, a theme emerged, a North Star that would guide all subsequent decisions. What if we happened upon Dominaria in the spring? How does a plane renew after withstanding countless devastations? Reframing the world this way invited an unexpected question. Can ruins be beautiful, even when they remind a civilization of its own brutality? Together with Kelly Diggs and an ensemble of concept artists, Winters led Dominaria into a season of sunlight. He filled the skies with fluffy white clouds and dotted the meadows with wildflowers. He restocked the swamps with jovial spirits in the school of Minula and Miyazaki. He re-envisioned the Thalids to be equal parts gangrenous and gardenly, and credits Stephen Belledin for refreshing their design. There would be no Slimefoot without Steve, writes Winters. Although Belledin was involved in the early stages of development, he was assigned only 2 illustrations in the final card file. The first was on a saga, a brand new card type bound to a narrow vertical format. Belledin chose to tell the origin story of the continent of Shiv with a tapestry painted in oils. This optical illusion was a masochistic endeavor that chewed through brushes and the muscles in Belledin's wrist. It was tedious and required tremendous consistency to keep the thousands of tiny vertical lines in parallel with one another and with the edge of the hardboard. Even when looking at close-ups, I'm still not convinced this isn't a rug. The second commission was Mox Amber. Stylistically, this painting is much closer to Belledin's body of work than the first Eruption. It sits firmly in the genre of imaginative realism. Compositionally, this is a rather simple image of a pendant resting on a fold of leather. Mark Winters was steadfast about bringing the antiquity of the set's artifacts into broad view. He wanted none of them to be buried in the ground, especially the monumental war machines that unleashed cataclysm across the plane during the Brothers' War. Instead, he saw these relics, both colossal and inconsequential, to be tangible reminders of the distant past. They were to be wielded and venerated by Dominaria's present-day peoples. These are civilizations that have long since discovered their ancestries and are now in full acceptance of them. Acceptance communicates a totally different mood. Acceptance and its celebration invites the sunshine and keeps nothing in the dark. It was maybe by my 5th or 6th pass of Mox Amber when I noticed that it too was framed by light. In a hiding in plain sight kind of way, Belledin gently situated the stone beneath an ambiguous dance of shadows, perhaps cast by the foliage of a tree above. This works in tandem with the shape of the silver necklace as it spirals toward the center of the painting, as does the seam of the stitched leather, which intersects exactly with the crest of the gemstone. The sun, shooting its rays from right to left, illuminates the speckles within the amber and creates its false refraction. And the Mox's frame, a sleek arm wrapping around the body, mirrors the amber's oblong shape. Everything works in service of guiding the eye directly to this point, an ensemble of invisible lines that funnel our focus. Surprisingly, this was not the first design that Belledin submitted for approval, or even the second. The original request was to depict a pair of hands holding an amulet, while avoiding any explicit reference to Voik and Baga's designs. Beginning with Mox Diamond in 2010, Baga had become the de facto illustrator for Mox in New and Old. His compositions interlaced environmental storytelling with detailed renders of the game's most coveted pieces of jewelry. All of them showed charms cradled in the palms of hands, characteristic of the gem's abilities. Hands aquatic, hands metallic, hands decaying away. After the initial submission for review, Belledin's first sketch was deemed too close to this lineage and was discarded. In search of a simpler approach, Steve went back further in time to Dan Frazier's original images as references, images he calls awesomely efficient. These Moxes were painted to be legible at card size from across the table. They were intentionally iconic in the true sense of the word. Their silhouettes were formal and their colors blocky, their details minimal but important. The second sketch for Mox Amber evoked Frazier's work and showed progress, but Wizards felt the mise-en-scène was too haphazard. Steve agreed. While they weren't trying to guide me down the aesthetic path that previous Mox illustrators had taken, they were absolutely trying to keep me on the right tonal path, and that was where I'd fallen short. So back to the sketchbook he went and produced version 3. Without context of Magic world building or seeing the Moxes in play, this image may seem little more than a quiet still life. Nothing about the composition communicates that the necklace is an enchanted object of mystical power, and that was intentional. Belledin confesses that he's not really a fan of magic items, especially those surrounded by glowing auras that demand your attention. Rather, he likes that the One Ring is an unassuming gold band, and that the genie's lamp could be mistaken for junk. Entrenching such an item in a world that sees it as its continuation and not its exception creates believability. It grounds us in the logic of the fantasy and invites our curiosity. What makes this amulet so special, and why is it made of amber? In our world, amber is a petrified tree resin that people have been harvesting and repurposing as gems for millennia, with some specimens carbon dating back 12,000 years. The most concentrated depository of amber is in the Baltic Sea, where a thick forest once grew before the Earth entered its ice age. When agitated by windy storms, buoyant fragments of amber buried in the seabed rise and drift to shore, where impassioned scavengers sift the sand in search of golden pebbles. The Greeks called amber elektron, from which the word electric derived, because real amber holds a static charge. Among the gifts carried by the three magi was myrrh, a resin similar in quality and luxury to amber, used now for perfumes and essential oils. Amber has been employed as medicine to ease the pain of teething in newborns and arthritis in the elderly. When lit aflame, the scent of burning amber is sweet. And amber was the enchantment of Queen Sophia Charlotte of Prussia, who commissioned an entire room in her palace to be adorned, floor to ceiling, with decorative amber. Some referred to it as an eighth wonder of the world. Her amber room was looted centuries later by Nazi Germany and was subsequently destroyed by bombs during the Second World War, amounting to the most valuable artwork ever lost. The one that stands now near St. Petersburg is a reconstruction from old photographs that took 23 years and immense funding to build. Surprisingly, amber has appeared only once before in Magic. Amber Prison from 1996 shows a woman together with some insects trapped in a small stone. The idea of preserving living creatures for later exploits was fresh in the pop cultural imagination of the mid-90s. Perhaps this card took some inspiration from Spielberg's blockbuster or Crichton's novel. Paleontologists have found all sorts of bugs and flowers and feathers in amber, but none of these fossils have any power to resurrect the extinct. Belledin, on the other hand, was explicitly directed to not include any life forms in his rendition. Mox Amber was not to be an illusion of any sort, or a cell for creatures caught in stasis. Instead, it was meant to invoke Dominaria's deep past, one that also endured an ice age and speaks in geologic time. Amber then was chosen for this Mox because it embodies history. It is a moment in time made tangible, one that requires living processes to form. Amber is relatively fragile compared to inorganic crystals like rubies or sapphires. It oxidizes and slowly changes color. It ages. If the word legendary is to carry any ludonarrative weight, it must be bound to time. Legends and myths are formed through generations, and so too is amber. Only the energy pulled from an amulet of similar memory could ever animate them. It seems significant to me that Stephen Belledin was chosen to paint this image. Mark Winters must have recognized what I've always seen in his work: a palette of natural colors, a reserved approach to composition, a meticulous attention to detail. When entrusted with the task, Belledin over-delivered an arresting painting. Rendering thousands of tiny creases and cracks in the leather, negotiating with every material in two tones to match the overlapping sun rays and shadows, resolving to paint every chain link in the necklace, it all seems excessive when considering the end result, a tiny image printed on a playing card. I wondered actually how many links there were in total, so I counted by hand, 780 some odd repetitions. When was the last time I did anything, let alone the same thing, 780 times? What could have motivated me to start? What could have motivated me to finish? They say we will never make movies like The Lord of the Rings again because of scale, cost, ambition, dedication. I wonder if paintings like Mox Amber are slowly going the way of the great films of yesteryear. What are the incentives to paint like this? Why spend all this time and craftsmanship on illustrations for a card game? Who possesses the discipline to commit to the monotony when quick, mediocre work is acceptable and often celebrated? Why bother, especially when commission fees have remained stagnant for decades despite the game's ongoing growth in revenue and popularity? Ultimately, why do anything hard when it's easier than ever to do everything easier? I guess I keep coming back to Mox Amber because of Belledin's self-imposed effort and intention. This is a simple painting, but it came from a place of profound care. Such images tend to nestle in the mind and slowly mature, especially when they're quiet and unassuming like this one is. They ask that we look a little bit closer and a little bit longer to be rewarded. Belledin still owns this painting. Over the years, it's one of the few he's kept for himself. My partnership continues with foil armor, the safest and most effective way to flatten your curled cards. Holographic trading cards warp due to differences in humidity between where they were manufactured and where they are now. A stack of heavy books won't fix that, but these two-way humidity control packs do. They've been specifically engineered to reset convex and concave cards. Keep your foils in tip-top shape so they look good and hold their value in the years to come. Go to foilarmor.com and purchase some 8-gram packs for use on individual cards and some bigger 33-gram packs for long-term storage. Use code STUDIES at checkout for 15% off. Thanks, Foil Armor, for the support. In 2022, Steve Belledin was invited to revisit Mox Amber for the Brothers War Retro Artifact series. He returned with this image, which provides a close-up detail of the chain links and a profile view of the encasing. We can see how the two arms meet along the sides. This image is also full of textures. He built the base with stains to mimic parchment paper, fit with washed-out notes and sketches in brown. The artists were instructed to make the language unintelligible, so there are no clues in the written words, but Belledin snuck his name in the top right corner here anyway. The coolest detail, though, is this fold running across the lower third of the piece. Steve thought the painting needed one final touch before submitting it, so he added a crease to further the illusion that these plans were folded up and tucked away somewhere. It's a feature I would miss if I wasn't guided to look right at it, but now it's undeniable. Once again, his most clever details are often hiding in plain sight. Among the many talents of Olivia Gobert-Hicks is her affinity for jewelry craft. In May 2018, immediately following the release of Dominaria, she was inspired to bring Mox Amber to life. It started with hunting for the perfect gem. This one came in roughly the same shape as the reference. It later proved difficult to source further stones of similar size. She then hand-worked all the sterling silver, cutting and soldering the pieces into position and notching them to match the illustration. To assure the amber would stay in place, She drilled a small hole across the body and connected each side of the frame with a stabilizing bar. The finishing touches include some gentle polish to bring that beautiful color into the sun, and tying it together with a chain link necklace. I was amazed by this piece when she completed it. I'm still thinking about it all these years later. Thank you so much for watching. I would like to thank my patrons for their ongoing support. You can join the Patreon and get some kickbacks and some rewards like a signed card or your name in the credits like all these folks here. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks again very much for all your support.